Okay, starting again. Let me push start here. So now, sex-linked inheritance. Now we're not talking autosomes. We're talking genes that are on the sex chromosomes. And we're talking that phenomenon of X's and Y's. And if you've looked at those karyotypes, the X's are larger than the Y's. So that the X's have more genes on them than the Y's do. So because of this, males or females with Turner syndrome have only one allele for a given trait, for a given gene type. Okay? And because they have only one allele, it's on the X and it comes from the mom, we call that sex-linked inheritance. Okay. So, and I'll do you a couple of examples on the board. But classic hemophilia, which is factor VIII deficiency. Someone asked about factor VIII. See, here's the thing. Blood clotting involves multiple proteins. Some of them are called factors. Factor I, factor II, factor VIII, etc. And it's a cascade. So it's kind of like knocking over dominoes. So if those dominoes are different factors, they have to be in place and they have to work properly. With factor VIII deficiency, this is classic hemophilia, and it is the one that is sex-linked. The factor VIII doesn't work properly, so that when someone is cut or bruised or something like that, their blood doesn't clot properly because the dominoes stop falling. So they don't get to the end of the clotting process. And this person, look at that. Look at that knee. That's blood. That person whacked their knee, and it's not a cut, so it's not draining out on the floor, but it's building up under the skin. So it's an inability to clot blood. Females are carriers, not all females, but some. Because females have two alleles, they can have a normal factor VIII allele, so one that produces the normal version of factor VIII that works properly, so they're blood clots. Okay, we'll talk more about that. Duchenne muscular dystrophy is another example, and this one's just tragic because it results in death. It is a diagnosis right now, short of any gene therapy, which I believe they are working on, is a death sentence. So there's a progression of lack of proper functioning of nerves over time. And again, this is in boys, this Duchenne muscular dystrophy. There are multiple types of muscular dystrophy, just like there are multiple types of hemophilia. So we're talking this particular type that is sex-linked. So little boys get this. And then they tend to pass away, I think maybe early 20s with some better treatment. But basically, there's a protein that interferes with the normal functioning of the nervous system, and it gets progressively worse, the phenotype associated with it, and eventually they go from being able to walk, being able to not walk well, being able to walk maybe with some kind of crutches, being wheelchair bound, then finally their hearts or their diaphragms just don't work anymore, and so they stop breathing or their hearts stop beating and they die. Okay, so I told you it was tragic. Autosomal dominant inheritance. These are diseases that are caused by dominant alleles, and again on autosomes. So now our problem allele is a dominant allele. So in this case, we want to be recessive. We want to be homozygous recessive, in fact, because it's a dominant allele. So that means, let's say H, big H, or big H, little h, has the problem associated with this. Okay? Now, I'm just giving you some examples. I didn't give you all the... And, oh, let me go back to sex-linked. Not everything is like a terrible, horrible disease and tragic disease like muscular dystrophy, or in the past, classic hemophilia, before we had better ways of treating it. But there's red-green color blindness. That's why males are more likely to have red-green color blindness, because it's sex-linked. Male pattern baldness is also a sex-linked condition. Okay, so back to our autosomal dominant. Huntington's disease, which is awful. Right now, no cure. It is a terminal diagnosis. So, it's a gradual deterioration of brain tissue. And let's see, the MRI of normal on the left compared to the right. And I don't know why this is the case, but and I'm wondering if they have them backwards. But it causes the brain to start to deteriorate. It's like Alzheimer's, but it's genetic. It's autosomal dominant. And it begins in earlier than Alzheimer's, like maybe late 30s, certainly 40s. Usually the person starts to develop this, and then they continue to decline, and then they die from it. Woody Guthrie died from Huntington's disease. So one of the things, and I'll show you on the board, is that when we are talking about this type of disorder, we are talking someone who ends up with, they don't know they have it, and then in their 30s or 40s they start experiencing mental declines. So they may have already had children, and it's a 50% chance of passing this down. I'm sorry, I got off track a little bit, but it's a 50% chance of passing this if someone has it. So Woody Guthrie, all of his children had a 50% chance of getting this. I think from some research I've done, none of them did, which is amazing. That's an amazing thing with flipping a coin, and getting, let's say, tails 6 or so times how many ever children he had. Just amazing. Luckily, it's rare. Another one, there are multiple types of, hypercholesterolemia, which is a buildup of cholesterol in the blood, which leads to, of course, heart conditions like, the heart stopping because of a blood clot. And there are multiple types, but there is one that is an autosomal dominant. So what happens is the transport protein for cholesterol doesn't work properly, doesn't move it from the blood into the cells, so it stays in the blood. Then it gets stuck on little abrasions in the arteries, especially those in the heart, and then it continues to build up until it occludes. So it builds up so much that the blood can't get through, and the person has a cardiac arrest. So I'll do an example of autosomal dominant. All right, now let me show you. I need to go into, while I have a few minutes, I want to talk about blood types. ABO blood groups. Okay. It's on Wikipedia, and it's not very big, but we're going to look at this. Okay, so we have multiple blood types. We have blood type A, we have blood type B, we have blood type AB, we have blood type O, we have Kell, Duffy, Lutheran, etc. We have a lot of blood types. And how we get these blood types is having what are called antigens on the surface of our red blood cells. Okay? So a person with blood type A has this, it's called an A antigen, and it's on the surface of the red blood cells. A person who is type B has, and notice they've done diagrams and changed the shape and the color. They have a B antigen. People who are type AB have both the A antigen, that's a pinkish one, and the teal one that goes with B. So they have both. People with type O do not have the A antigen or the B antigen. But here's the thing. 99.9% of us have some of these other blood types, which include like Kell and Duffy. So you would add, like I'm type A, I would add all those Kell antigens. I would add all those Duffy antigens. I would add all the Lutheran antigens, so that I wouldn't just have type A antigens on the surface of my red blood cells, but I'd have this plethora, numerous ones on my red blood cells. Okay? People with type O still would most likely, again, 99.9% of them have them. They're going to have Kell, Duffy, Lutheran, etc. Okay? Those are the minor blood groups. Now, what happens is the ABO, there's more variation there. It's not like 99.9% of the world's population has type A. Okay? So, type A and type O, in fact, are each about 45% of the population. So people with type A blood have A antigens, and get this, from birth, or even before birth, they're making an antibody called anti-B. And when antibodies and antigens get together, they cause clumping. And clumping is not good with red blood cells, because then they can't get through the capillaries or the small arteries, and then you have blood clots and things don't go so well. Okay? People who are type B, they make anti-A. You don't make the antibody for the type of blood you have, or you wouldn't be alive. So I'm type A, I make anti-B, and everything is fine as long as nobody puts some type B blood or type AB blood in me. If they put type B blood or type AB blood in me, my anti-B antigens are going to attack, or antibodies are going to attack those antigens, and well, I might die. Okay? This is where the blood transfusions come in. Okay, people who are type AB, because they have A antigens and B antigens, they don't make anti-A or anti-B, or they'd be dead. People who are type O don't have A antigens or B antigens, so they make both antibodies. So you cannot give somebody who is type O any blood but type O blood, because their antibodies will attack those antigens and they'll be potentially dead. So that's why we're so careful with blood transfusions. A is completely dominant over O, B is completely dominant over O, and A and B are co-dominant, and that's how you end up with people who are type AB. There's also the anti-D. So about 85% of at least Caucasians, that's a statistic I've seen, have a D antigen, and about 15% don't. And that's the one that goes with the positive and negative. So I said I was type A, but really what's more telling is that I'm A positive, which means I have A antigens and D antigens, as well as those other minor blood groups that 99.9% of my fellow humans have, so they're not usually an issue with a transfusion. Okay? So there can be A negative people, so they don't have the D. There's B positive, B negative, AB positive, AB negative, O positive, O negative. Now, here comes that thing about why O negative is the universal donor. Even though there's some antibodies in there, there's not antigens for that. The person who's type A, positive or negative, B, positive or negative, AB positive or negative. It doesn't matter. You can give them that blood because even though they have some anti-A and anti-B in there, there's not enough to cause the widespread clotting that can result in death, or what we call a transfusion reaction, which can lead to death. So O negative is the universal donor, because people who are Rh negative can get it too. Okay? O negative, though, can only get O negative. If you are O negative and you've donated blood, you probably know it because they call you every time the appropriate time has elapsed for you to come back in. Okay, I've got to stop this and start over again.